Well, one thing's certain, Mr. Mubarak will go sometime between now and September. And that raises the question, who will take over?
These protests have had one purpose, getting rid of Mubarak. But now what? The biggest fear for the U.S., that Egypt will turn towards Islamic fundamentalism. The Muslim Brotherhood, protesters representing the oldest and largest Islamic organization in Egypt, have advocated a state ruled by Islamic law, which would mean a step backwards for women's rights and the rule of law. They do not openly back al-Qaeda, but several of the founders of al-Qaeda were former members.
If somehow the Muslim Brotherhood were put in charge of the government in Egypt, it might make it possible for other terrorist groups to use Egypt again as a sanctuary, and it might mean an end to the peace between Israel and Egypt.
Another, perhaps more likely option, an outsider. Mohammed al-Baradei is a Nobel laureate who has returned to Egypt after years abroad. He ran the UN's nuclear watchdog program and opposed the Iraq War. The U.S. concerns about an outsider? He is not fully in line with U.S. policy toward Israel. A third option, Omar Suleiman. This is Mubarak's clear favorite. He's just named vice president. He would be a favorite of the military, coming from that world himself. But to the protesters, he would mean more of the same.
It doesn't necessarily work well for the United States if there's an Egyptian president who works very well with us, but is not popular within his own country.
There is also the unknown candidate, someone who will emerge as rapidly as the people in this square emerged to change history.
ABC America's Martha Raddatz there. Well, Bishop Suriel is the head of the Coptic Church in Melbourne. He says the welfare of Christians in Egypt is already under threat, but could further disintegrate once President Mubarak loses power.
Look, I think as Christians we've seen President Mubarak sympathetic to Coptic causes and being moderate to a great extent. But I think our problem really is not with Mubarak per se, but I think it's with his government and with those that work underneath him that are giving a lot of problems to the Copts, and we are not getting our full human rights as Egyptian citizens there, and a lot of persecution and discrimination against the Christians in Egypt. So I think this is where really the problem lies for us.
Bishop, do you feel that the federal government here is providing enough assistance for Australian Coptic Christians in Egypt at the moment?
Look, I'm very grateful to Prime Minister Julia Gillard and her government for providing airplanes to be able to take Australian citizens out to a safe place, and this has been very much appreciated by our community. In particular, one of my priests and his wife and children will be boarding the flight today to be in a safe place to be able to come back home to Australia, and many other young people and families that are stuck in Egypt at the moment. So we are very grateful to the Australian government for taking this very important measure to keep Australians safe that are in Egypt at the moment.
If we just track back to earlier this year, there were fears of a religious war erupting in the wake of the bombing of an Egyptian Coptic church on New Year's Eve. What are your parishioners most concerned about in Egypt now?
Well, I think they're concerned about any extremist groups that may take out terrorist acts against Christians in Egypt or even Egyptians in general, and also that we may be able to get our full human rights if there is a change of government and a change of policy. I think that the Christians in Egypt need to be involved in this process and need to play an active role so that they have enough representation in government, so that the Coptic issue is not buried and forgotten, and that we can have equal human rights just like any Egyptian citizen in Egypt.
Bishop Suriel, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you.